Every modern political system, from the minimal libertarian state to the expansive welfare democracy, derives its legitimacy from the same claim. They all argue that their specific structure maximizes human freedom. To achieve that freedom, these systems construct opposing legal and economic realities. One demands unchecked free markets, the other requires heavy wealth redistribution. In practice, the two models contradict one another. This contradiction exists because liberty is a contested, dynamic philosophical framework that has evolved over centuries rather than a single static condition. Because the specific definition of liberty dictates the limits of state power, the way a society answers this question shapes every law its citizens live under. The British philosopher Isaiah Berlin formalized the modern debate on this problem in a 1958 lecture titled Two Concepts of Liberty. Berlin observed that our understanding of freedom splits into two distinct categories: negative liberty and positive liberty. Negative liberty functions as a boundary. It defines a protected sphere of non-interference around the individual, dictating what the state cannot do to you. Positive liberty operates as a vector. This staircase represents the capacity and capability the state enables the individual to achieve. To decode any modern political system, we must map how it balances the negative boundary of non-interference against this positive vector of self-mastery. Negative liberty strictly measures the absence of external impediments. It focuses on a single question: how far am I free from interference by others? In the 17th century, Thomas Hobbes argued that liberty is the removal of obstacles to prevent chaos. John Locke expanded this into natural rights, arguing life, liberty, and property are locked into place before the state exists. Under Locke's model, the state is a contracted entity. Its sole legitimate function is to act as a guard dog for this boundary, rather than an active participant in the individual's life. Locke's negative framework provided the philosophical architecture for Enlightenment constitutionalism, notably influencing the codified natural rights found in the American Declaration of Independence. This paradigm views human beings as fully formed rational actors who require only a vacuum of external coercion to thrive. John Stuart Mill later attempted to define the precise limit of societal interference. Mill's harm principle dictates that the boundary of negative liberty can only be breached by the state if the individual's actions threaten to harm another person. In the 20th century, Robert Nozick pushed this to its extreme through the night watchman state. Under this strict negative framework, redistributive taxation and state-funded welfare are classified as breaches of individual autonomy, the state trespassing to extract resources. While a purely negative framework protects legal autonomy, it remains structurally blind to the internal conditions of the individual. Removing the state does not remove the constraints of poverty or illness. Positive liberty shifts the focus to the presence of capacity, asking, am I truly capable of directing my own life? T.H. Green pointed out that a legal right to act is useless without the financial, educational, or physical capacity to execute that action. Ignorance and poverty trap an individual just as effectively as physical chains. Positive liberty requires the state to build the staircase that allows the individual to climb out of that chasm. Jean-Jacques Rousseau argued that true freedom is found through participation in the general will. Immanuel Kant linked this to moral autonomy, arguing genuine freedom requires strict self-discipline and adherence to reason. This framework requires the state to be an active architect of opportunity, shifting the government's role from a passive guard dog to an active builder. Nobel laureate Amartya Sen modernized this positive framework for contemporary economics. Sen's capability approach dictates that freedom should be measured by the actual capabilities people possess to lead meaningful lives, rather than by income or legal rights alone. Under this approach, public education, healthcare, and gender equality are viewed as the raw materials of freedom. This philosophy forms the bedrock of the modern democratic welfare state, where liberty is treated as an active, state-sponsored developmental goal. Isaiah Berlin recognized a grave danger in this logic, warning that positive liberty can be weaponized when pushed to its logical extreme. The paradox is that the pursuit of true human potential can be used to justify severe state oppression. If the state believes it knows a citizen's potential better than the citizen does, it may feel justified in forcing them into compliance for their own good. Historical authoritarian regimes have frequently used censorship and political repression under the guise of guiding the collective toward their true freedom. Pursuing maximum capacity without strictly enforced negative boundaries builds the architecture of tyranny. Contrasting the flaws of each isolated model reveals why modern states struggle to balance the two. Negative liberty can produce a perfectly defended boundary where the individual is left to stagnate or starve inside a legally protected vacuum. Conversely, positive liberty can provide abundant capacity at the cost of a total loss of individual choice. Modern democratic constitutionalism is the perpetual, active calibration of both paradigms simultaneously. This unified model uses negative civil liberties to protect against arbitrary power, while deploying positive welfare policies to ensure citizens have the agency to exercise those liberties. This calibration traces its roots back to the 1215 signing of the Magna Carta, which introduced the principle that even a king is subject to the rule of law, the first foundational boundary on absolute power. Contemporary challenges, from digital surveillance to algorithmic manipulation, constantly force us to redraw these boundaries and rebuild these vectors. Ultimately, maintaining this delicate balance of liberty requires the constant upkeep of a fragile, dynamic architecture by an educated populace. True freedom is the masterful, tense balancing act of providing structural opportunity for self-mastery while fiercely preserving the autonomy to choose one's own path.